Thinking Captions. Tonight we have Thinking Captions with Tanna Tucker and her invited guests, which are Soleil Summer and Richie Pope and Minnie Phan. Quickly, I'm just going to go over the order of events. My name is Avi Jetter. I'm one of the organizers volunteering tonight. Let's go over the order of events. We're going to do the intro for San Francisco Zine Fest, go over a few house rules and expectations, and Tanna is graciously agreed to sort of host tonight, so there's no really need for me to go over my information. So I'm gonna give it to Tanna after I go through the house rules and expectations. The guests and Tanna will present their work, and if we have time, there will be a few questions for Tanna and her guests, and some questions hopefully from Facebook and from YouTube if we have time, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. So first off, San Francisco Zine Fest was founded in 2001 as a gathering place for writers and artists from around the world, but especially the Bay Area, typically held as a one-day event at the County Fair Building in Golden Gate Park. Our 2019 festival had about 240 exhibitors and over 5,000 attendees. Due to COVID-19, our 2020 festival is going 100% virtual. What is Cyberfest? As I stated before, typically we would have a one-day event around the Labor Day weekend, just one day, one guest of honor. But this year, due to COVID, we've had 3 weeks of wonderful programming with 3 guests of honor. It's run from September 6th to September 26th. So we have exhibitor show and tells, we had readings, workshop demos, interviews, and most importantly, we had 3 guests of honor. Alex Combs the first week, Death Be Some the second week, and Tanna Tucker this third week. Our Safer Spaces policy. We are committed to providing a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment at San Francisco Zine Fest events in any form. Individuals violating the Safer Spaces policy may be sanctioned or expelled from the space or the event at the discretion of any San Francisco Zine Fest organizer. Respect people's opinions, beliefs, different states of being, and different points of view. Always get explicit verbal consent before taking someone's photo or crossing other personal boundaries. Be responsible for your actions and aware that they may have an effect on others regardless of your original intent. A safe and respectful community is everyone's responsibility. And just a few guidelines. This typically applies if we have a larger gathering, but tonight, not so much for our guests. Video off to prevent lagging. The ASL interpreters will have the spotlight on them. Keep yourself on mute unless you're presenting. If you have a question, ask it in chat. There are chat moderators to assist you. And we are thankful for ASL interpretation provided by ProBonoASL. Above all, please be respectful. And tonight, our guest of honor is Tanna Tucker. And let's see. Often employing an Afrofuturist framework, Tanna uses comics and drawings as a way to map her relationship to the Black diaspora and to integrate the utility of Black presence or absence in historical and mythical spaces. She is currently illustrating the Afrofuturistic graphic novel Black Cube, written by Yatasha Womack through Abrams Comic Arts Megascope 2022. Her work has been featured in Lab Magazine, The Nib, and in various anthologies, including Black Comics Returns and Cosmic Underground, a grimoire of Black speculative content. She recently concluded a political power fellowship at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And before I completely turn it over to Tanna, I just want to say thank you so much for being so generous and sharing yourself with us. It was wonderful doing the Q&A with you, and I'm super excited tonight. Your guests of honor are super dope artists and zine makers, And again, as you know, I'm a huge fan of yours, Tanna, and I'm excited to hear more from you and from your guests. And take it away. Thank you so much for being here, everyone, and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Avi, for that introduction. I really appreciate you. And of course, again, thank you to all of the organizers. The festival is 100% volunteer run. And thank you again to our ASL interpreters who have been working hard all month long to make the festival as accessible as possible. And thank you so much to my guests for being here. I really admire everybody that I've gathered here tonight. And yeah, I'm just really excited, and it's special. And of course, I'd rather be meeting with all of you in person, but one benefit of meeting virtually is that you can grab your friends in faraway places. And so we have Soleil dialing in, staying up late in Philly, and Richie joining us from LA. So we'll get to the reading. First, we have my dear friend, Minnie Phan, who again, their work I admire very much. I was actually familiar with Minnie's comics before I met her. I maybe saw her work a couple years before I met her. And the first piece I ever saw of yours was this really sensitive, maybe autobiographical piece about finding strength in your own solitude. I think it was titled The Power of One. And I don't even think you have it posted anywhere at the moment. And yeah, Minnie just has this like kind of beautiful, sensitive line and watercolor work. And then I finally met you at the Decolonized Comics panel at Impact Hub back in 2016. And then we were in a show together in 2016 at Studio Grand that our friend Bree Nunez curated called POW Women in Comics. And I'm really excited to hear you speak more about your work and your practice. So go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much. You know, we were on the phone the other day and we were saying that if I ever need a hype girl, it should be you. And yes, you got the role. You're hired. You're officially my hype person forever. So thank you so much for that. And it was so nice to hear the history that we have together and that you've seen my work. Some work that I actually made, I remember when I first graduated college too, which is so nice to see someone who's watched me grow. So thank you so much, Tanna, for inviting me and allowing me this space. So I'm going to share my screen and to present a little slideshow that I have. 2 seconds. Okay. All right. So once it loads. Okay, well, that's all right. We can do this too. That's totally fine. So again, my name is Minnie, and I'm an illustrator and a cartoonist. And I want to share today work that I did at the beginning of COVID, and then some work that happened a little more recently. And I want to share the work because it contrasts it's like the feelings that I'm going through right now with feelings of hope and feelings of despair. And at the end, there's going to be some advice, general advice, just for staying in practice, staying as a part of the art world. And the work that I'm showing is actually all work that I did for an Asian American health group. And I was so privileged to be able to work with like-minded Asian Americans who wanted to help reach our most vulnerable since Ferguson. But it was really nice to be able to channel my work, my creative work, and my political beliefs into art and a message with an organization that was trying to create dialogue between two groups that I think historically have had tension. So I'm really grateful to be able to do that. But okay, so let's start. So I didn't write the words. It's the writers were the organization. I did the illustration. And this was the last one, the last comic that I made in a series that was a week long, every week for a few months. And this is my favorite one. So day by day, still growing. We have a family, everyone's thinking about COVID, obsessing on COVID, everyone's talking, thinking about COVID. And it's the main character's writing her journal. Shelter in place, day 39. I'm worn down by the constant focus on COVID-19. I also want to remember all that I have right now. I'm thankful that we can quarantine together and that we're healthy. Our community is sharing what resources they can. Our staff is taking care of our community. Spring is here. We'll take time, but I know that we'll get through this. And this was the last comic that I did for them with the project we were working on. And it ended on such an uplifting, hopeful note. Spring had just started. Everything was so hopeful and open, and I was ready to take on the world, even if it was during a global pandemic. And then a downpour. While working and trying to figure out distance learning if you have a family and working from home, all of the stresses that come with COVID. We have a downpour that happens. And I think we all know the events, and it was also everywhere like COVID. We couldn't turn away. And for many of us, it exhausted us. It felt personal. It was really painful. And it made us more active. It made us feel like we had to go out and make a difference and do something. So instead of doing this, we did this. So we came together, and we knew, we know that there's still a pandemic, but there are things that are even greater that have been systemic and rooted in this country. And we came together in numbers, and we came home after the day of protest, and still it doesn't really end. And I share these two comics because I think that it's for the feelings that at least I know I'm still feeling today. I made this comic about a month ago. It's a feeling I'm still feeling. It's both hopeful because I think it's hopeful because it captures like that energy of like we want to make a change, but also it captures the energy of how much longer do we have to do this, and when is it going to change? When is something going to happen? And looking at these two comics next to each other, I made them back to back. It was the last assignment and then a new assignment that they called me for, and I think that it's okay to feel duality, and it's okay for us to still need time to work together, to work within ourselves, to work in our communities. It's possible to make change. I don't want to end on this. I want to end on this, if we can somehow. But I'm going to. I wanted to make something new for the reading. I tried so hard to put in that energy and the excitement, but what I needed was something else. I needed inspiration. I needed motivation, and I decided to go back to the drawing board. And I want to share with you advice that I've given in the past to graduating art students, but I think is just as important now today with anyone who's making art. And I'm going to use RuPaul GIFs and screenshots to further send my message. Tanna, I just wanted to check in about time. Am I okay still for the next few minutes?
You're good on time, yeah.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what do we do when we're in moments of despair and things are dark and we just feel so hopeless? Well, let's fall back in love with your work. You have to be true to yourself. I think right now it's really easy to succumb to the depression and to not do anything. But we have to fall in love with your work. Make the work that brings you joy and happiness, and that will blossom into something. So fall back in love with your work. Mental health is a priority. If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else? Do I need to explain any more of this? I mean, this is just it. Before we can even fall back in love with your work, yes, you have to work on your mental health. So that means talk to a therapist if you need to, reach out to friends, make community, go to events like this. We need each other so much, especially in this time. We need each other. Sleep is a necessity, not a luxury. That means go to sleep, not at 4 in the morning. That means if you stay up all night working on your work and you're burnt out the next day, it's about feeling rested and recovered and full, so that you can bring your full self to whatever you are doing, whether it's community organizing, or it's making art, or it's working on that passion project you've always wanted to, or just staying alive, right? You just need to make sure you take care of yourself. And I really love what David Lynch says about anger and depression. So he says, anger and depression and sorrow are beautiful things in a story, but they're like poison to the filmmaker or artist. They're like a vice grip on creativity. If you're in that grip, you can hardly get out of bed, much less experience the flow of creativity and ideas. You must have clarity to create. You have to be able to catch ideas. And I think that really captures everything I'm saying. Take care of yourself in this moment, especially those in California. We have the pandemic, heat wave, smoke, so many things. It's okay to take care of yourself. And yes, that's okay to take care of yourself. Keep a schedule. That's really, I know it sounds easier than it is, but I just have to put this in there because it's a reminder for myself as much as it is sharing with everyone else. Be a student for life experiment. Keep learning. That can be applied to so many things right now with the political changes we're having, with why can I begin with needing to be a student? Invest in the long run. That has to do with in social justice. When we're, as artists, as creatives, as people involved in our communities, it's about the changes that we're going to see far down the line, not right now. I mean, when I think earlier this year, I wanted to go to, I did go to protests. I was out there. I wanted to see a difference happen now, but I was a fool for thinking that, because it's not. I'm an Aries. I want it done now, but it's not going to happen like that. And so you have to see the long run, envision that it's going to come later, if you keep going step by step. And this has to do with, the next slide is just logistics. Pricing is tricky. I don't want to get too much into this, but just remember that you are worth money, as in your time, your art, your energy is worth it. Aside from community projects and volunteering and all of that, just always remember that you should get paid for the things that you do, and get paid well too. And I know that for myself, being an immigrant, a woman, a person of color, is really hard for me to remember that, but just throwing this in there to remind people. Seek community, work together. Don't get bitter, just get better. What else can I say about that? Be nice, courteous, and be professional. This one is, of course, probably for students, so sorry, let's skip that one. Be prepared to fuck up. That's with anything, talking about politics, talking about art, being involved in anything. You're gonna fuck up. It's just a part of it, part of life. And I have just a few more, and then I'll pass this over to the next person. I want people to realize it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall down, get up, look sickening, and make them eat it. And last of all, it's so important, is to believe in yourself. I believe in yourself in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's being an artist, making comics, making art, being active in your community. One of my favorite illustrators shared, my piece of advice is to try not to think so large, think small. I know it sounds so hard, but think small. Think about the marks you want to make on the paper in front of you, the ones that bring you pleasure and satisfaction. You can't control what other people think, or if they'll give you a job, or if the world will change, or whatever. You can only control your own actions and the work you produce. You have to be a little delusional to pursue a life in the arts. So throw caution to the wind and make pictures that excite you, and hopefully the world will agree. You have to be a little delusional and just go for it. Whatever it is, it is. If it's applying to grad school, if it's being a doctor, being an artist, making social change, whatever it is, just do it. And that's me. Thanks so much. Hopefully I didn't blow through it too fast, but we'll do a Q&A after.
Thank you for that, Minnie. I really appreciate you sharing those reflections and your vulnerability, and giving us a window into your exchanges with your students. So thank you for that, and the words of encouragement. So let's see. Next we have none other than Soleil Summer, my other very dear friend, my sis, my family. So before she broke all of our hearts and moved away to Philadelphia, we would meet up regularly to sketch and draw, and it's what we loosely refer to as Black Draw Club, which still exists in new iterations, I believe. You know, again, I just admire everybody who's here. I love Soleil's illustration and graphic design work. You have, anybody who's seen your work knows you have this very unapologetic and intimidating approach to mark making and composing. And you also have some of the best curatorial sensibilities I've ever encountered. If you guys follow her on social media, then you know what I'm talking about. She's always indexing musical and literary explorations. And I'm so glad that you're here. So looking forward to hearing you speak more about your work, Soleil.
Thank you. Oh, so sweet. Yeah, I feel so thankful to, to know you and just getting to know you over the last few years, and to also be a part of Thinking Captions again. Just like, I'm like, wow. So yeah, thank you for such a beautiful description of my work. I think intimidating is, we talked about this the other day. I used to feel weird about it, but I guess that's pretty cool. It was funny, Minnie, right as like you were kind of towards the end of your presentation, I was having some severe technical difficulties while you were talking about fucking up and making mistakes. I was just like, oh my God, it's okay, it's okay.
It is okay.
So it was very reaffirming, and the technical difficulties, I believe, have more or less been resolved. So I'm going to share my screen, if you all can see that. So I think today, similarly, I wanted to have some more comics done for today, but I think I'm just going to do more of an overview of my work in the past, and then kind of an excerpt / initial thumbnail of an upcoming work. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. I think, before I got really into making zines, I was really into bookmaking, and so these are some samples of books that I had made in the past, mostly journals that I would just use for myself, or I think the kind of accordion book in the bottom right, I just made some drawings in. Don't know where it is now, but it looked really nice in this picture. And then the ones on the top right, my friend Meg made some prints a while ago, and I think these were maybe extras or ones that were maybe damaged or something, and ended up making some notebooks out of them. I hope to get back into maybe more intricate bookmaking when it comes to my zines some point down the line, but running across these today was really inspirational. So just kind of wanted to start off with that small origin-ish story. And then this is a collection of few zines that I've made. The ones on the bottom left, the one that kind of just looks like a blank piece of paper, and then the denim texture are two of the earliest zines I'd ever made, and the rest of them are a little bit more recent. So the bottom left, I think we had some friends and I several years ago had organized some sort of like craft fair, and we had so many flyers. I think we printed like 3,000 flyers or something, and we didn't use them all. And so I just made a bunch of doodles on the back of them and then scanned them and made this scene. And then ended up being on display at Wolfman Bookstore for some reason. I think it maybe was I don't know. It was there. And there were only maybe 10 copies or so, because I don't think I was super invested in distribution at the time. So there are only a few of those out there in the world. And then also the zine next to it was a collection of photos I was taking, because I had just moved to Oakland in 2012 or 13 or something, and I was just sort of taking pictures of what I was seeing and collected them all in a book. And running across the zine today, it was great, because I think definitely that's something I still want to do, with so many photos from California, and that being a place that was really important to my personal growth. I definitely want to investigate making photo zines again. The top the rest of them, they're kind of different sort of experiments, so to say. I think I was definitely getting more into the more abstract kind of brush strokes and really inky, blotty textures that are really common in my work now. And then this one in the middle, this very small one, is a zine called Flora that I made when I had just moved to Philadelphia, and another zine where there's only maybe like 10 copies, and I made it because I was broke because I just moved, and I went to Philly Zine Fest, and I was like, well, I need to make something to trade with people if I, you know, if I wanted to, I don't know, get some cool stuff maybe. So I ended up just giving it out to all of the Black people that I saw. And then I think that's partially how Black Draw Club in Philadelphia sort of came together, was just like, I'm alone and I need something. Please talk to me. Here's my meager offering to you. And it actually worked out pretty well. So that's cool. And then this zine all the way to the right, the largest one, is one that I did with Unity Press, also at Wolfman Bookstore. It was at their anniversary party. I don't remember what year of the anniversary it was, but I was kind of in that upstairs area. If anyone has been to Wolfman, or what was Wolfman. And I think, I don't remember if it was Jeff or Gabe from Unity, but they were like, do you want to make a zine? And I was like, yeah, of course. And they were like, great, here's some paper. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then made it, and it was really fun. And I don't know, it makes me really happy every time I see it, because it's just a very silly sort of thing. And this next slide is a piece of a zine that isn't featured in that kind of group pick, from a zine called Gesture, which was basically another one of my sort of earlier ventures into this style of drawing and creating. There were a couple of portraits in that zine too. I think it was made in 2018. I don't really recall. But yeah, I wish I had more photos of that zine with me, but I don't know if I have a copy of it anymore at this point. And this next slide, I guess, sort of pivoting into some more of the work that I've kind of done less for myself and more for other people. These two I put together because they're both specifically related to music. The one on the left, Isonic Garcia from Smart Bomb reached out to me around doing a flyer for Bomb Smartly, which was a show that the open-based collective Smart Bomb had on Lower Grand Radio a couple of years ago. And I made a whole bunch of drawings, and they ended up landing with this one. And it was a really fun drawing to do. And it's a really great radio show. I think there's still some recordings of it somewhere. And then the one to the right is one I finished last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know, sometime recently. And it was for a playlist that I made for All in a Week, which is a collective based in Los Angeles, and they ask artists to create a playlist of what they've been listening to that week, and then create a cover. They can either just do a front cover, front and back cover, or the video or whatever to represent that playlist. And it's really amazing. If you're interested in learning about new artists and new music, I highly suggest going to that Instagram page because it's awesome. And this is my playlist, Today's Not Yesterday. I was feeling pretty moody, I guess, and was also I was like in a place of being okay with pulling inspiration from other things. I think for a long time I was so caught up in this idea of, everything has to come from my own big brain. I have to use all of these, little neurons and connections and magic chemicals that I have up here to manifest every single thing that I ever create, which is silly because almost everything, nothing new is under the sun. Everything is a copy of something else, usually, normally. And so, it's okay to look around you and just pull from that instead of like trying to overexert yourself in your imagination when you really don't need to. But anyway, long story short, I was looking at Stevie Wonder's Inner Visions album because it was the first album that I saw from my like dinner table, and I was looking at it and trying to find different things that I could pull from it to create this. And I think the kind of text, like shadow, I suppose, I'm not sure what you would call that. It's not a drop shadow, but whatever that is definitely pulled directly from that, as well as some of the kind of compartmentalizing of different images and little abstract things. So that was a fun brain exercise. And then the next slide is an illustration I did for Pinko magazine last year, which is kind of like a queer, leftist, anarchist, adjacent sort of publication. And a dear friend, Jasmine, asked me to create an illustration of Kwasi Balagoon, who is an activist in the 70s and 80s, who was a part of the Black Liberation Army and some other groups working towards freedom, justice, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did this portrait of him. There aren't a lot of photos of him available online that were super clear, but something about this one really drew me in, especially considering that the essay sort of spoke to this idea of, just reflecting on your ancestors and inspirations and trying to think about that and how that could translate into this portrait of this person. So there's that. And this next slide are a bunch of tote bags that I've made. The first one, again, for Wolfman Bookstore, one anniversaries I don't remember. I just really like this photo of my friend wearing it. And I also like that it's one of the few pictures I have of a tote bag that I've made where it's like been used and well loved and well worn. So I really loved that. And then the tomato tote is one that there's like 3 of in the world, and it's actually a cream and black bag in real life, but I thought it was silly, and I was working on a project for a restaurant opening in downtown Oakland, and I drew that tomato and I really liked it, and I wanted to immortalize it on a tote bag and thought like, oh, tee-hee-hee, tomato, like, wow, isn't that so funny? I'm so hilarious, and made a tote bag. And then this I did with Sun Night Editions, which they're a team of screen printers in Oakland. Amazing people, amazing friends, and I released this print edition with them alongside a tote bag as well. So that was a really fun thing, and I hope to do another print with them soon. How am I on time? I don't know how much time.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. This is a comic that I read last year, and so I'm not going to read it again, but it's called Anew, and it was a part of the Freak Comics anthology. And I think with this work, I was trying to, again, include some more of that, I would say, more of that heavy inking style into how I was drawing. So this is basically a short comic about this person who just hoards things because they don't have like a grip on reality or something. I think I was having a lot of feelings about my possessions at the time, and still do, and probably always will. So that's where this came out of. And then this one is a short 2-panel thing that came out of this one specifically. I remember it was like 3 a.m. I was in a mood, as I usually am, and it says, imagine going to bed when you said you would, instead of spending those 8 precious hours recounting every horrible thing you said and did to everyone you think doesn't love you. Again, 3 a.m. thoughts, the drama, just all of it came out in this, and it was actually really cathartic to do, and looking at it, it definitely felt like a kind of a release in a way. I don't know. I'm not one to often be so blatant about my feelings in writing in this way, like usually in journaling, but this was an interesting practice in that and wanting to do, I would like to do that more, which leads to the next thing, which these are kind of like beginning drafts of panels for one of the books that I'm currently working on. And this one is kind of like pulling bits from journals. There are two books, like two personal books that I'm working on right now. And one is sort of pulling excerpts from my journal, as I said, and then the other is more so pulling from my memories of my childhood. You know, I grew up in Miami, which, you know, it's as shocking for you all as it is for me, probably, because it's such a, you know, I think people have this really specific idea of what Miami is and what it looks like and what the people who are from there are like. And so I think kind of looking back on my teenage years and my childhood and making a memoir of sorts would be an interesting thing. So that's one thing I'm working on. Maybe if it's ever done, I'll talk about it a little bit more in depth. But anyway, this is from the first book, the journal one. And it says, you want what's best for everyone. You want a lackadaisical attitude, a driver's license, everything seemingly out of touch. And these 4 panels specifically, you know, I want to try to integrate all of these different aspects of creating that I really like into one thing, which includes like a little bit more attention to line work, which is something that I used to do a lot that I haven't really done so much anymore or recently, and also bringing in more of that heavy sort of darkness and, you know, drawing plants and stuff and all these things. So yeah, that's what I have to say and share. Thank you for listening.
That's awesome. Thanks, Soleil.
Yeah, of course.
I'm really excited for the new work. Okay, so next we have Richie Pope. You know, again, pretty much all the artists here, I was familiar with their work and like a fan of their work before I ever got to meet them, and Richie's no exception to that. So I've been following your work for a long time, and then I met you for the first time at the 2018 CXC, which is Columbus Cartoon Crossroads, which is my hometown, Columbus, Ohio. You were actually a special guest there, and you were also an artist in residence at the local Cartoon Artist Museum.
Yeah.
And it was really special to see the full scope of your work up until that point collected in that installation. And I think that might have been the first time I saw that much of your cartooning. And, you know, again, I love the sensitivity and nuance that you bring into handling depictions of Blackness and also stories around Black masculinity, and excited to hear from you. So take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm gonna read 2 comics. I didn't do comics reading for a while because even though I talk a lot online, I'm very anxious generally as a person. So yeah, like I did my first reading, I think at Cala, I think last year, and people really seemed into it. So I did another one for a college, I think, on a Zoom like this. So yeah, this is my 3rd time reading, I think, both these comics together. So yeah, let's do this. Share screen. Okay, can y'all see? Looks good. All right, so this first comic is called Super-itis. Food sizzling. Munch, munch, munch. Crushed. Why can't I move? Maybe I should just chill for a bit. Give all that food some time to settle. What's good? You sure we're slumped for a hot minute. I need to get back to my job before I'm late. Where do you work at? Can I come too? No. A job is for grown folks. Your feet are moving, but you don't even know where you're going. You're going to be late anyway, so why rush? You'll miss so many wonderful things. It's like a little shrimp going like flopping around. My supervisor already don't fuck with me. I could lose my job for real. That wouldn't be so bad though, if you think about it. Maybe then you'll feel free. Oh. I didn't put a screen, but splat. Swoosh. Don't feel guilty if you need to take care of yourself. When you're in a good place, you can take care of others. Like a whoosh sound. I can't remember the last time I called my mom. Is that fucked up? Yeah, that's pretty fucked. But don't keep it that way just because you're ashamed, bro. Work-life balance is key. You work like you do to keep yourself moving. You're afraid that if you stop, then everything you work for will disappear. But if all you do is work, your relationships will disappear, and so will you. What is life if you're not living? And that's the end of that. And so my next one, I did it, I think a year or two, maybe later. Probably people know me more for this one, and it's called That Box We Sit On. So here we go. Caw! That's a bird. We hang out on this box every day after school. But why? Why do we sit here? Nigga, because it's flat. I mean, yeah, toss. But what is it? Stomp. Maybe the box is part of a bigger thing. Like, maybe it's a big mech that chills underground, waiting to wake up to protect the hood. Kicks out cops when they gang up to mess with people. And then it just goes back in the ground to rest. Or the box is the whole thing. And the part we sit on is like a shell to protect it. Thunk. Like a bug? Yeah. Alien bug sounds. It sheds the box skin to feed at night. That's why we can't stay outside late. Nah, I'm good. What if the inside is a door? Like a wormhole or some shit like that, right? And it pulls your body in and you can't fight it. It spits you out the other side, but it's like a black version of our world. They're all over the place. You can see the world for free. Boy, you already black as fuck. You stupid. But maybe you don't go to another universe at all. Maybe you go from one box to some other box. How do you know where you're going? You don't. I still have to go to school though. They got school all over, bro. Well, maybe the box makes you grow up faster. You know, grown dudes don't have to go to school. But what if you grow up too fast? Your friends in high school, are you all old and shit? I would say young forever, man. Fuck that. I heard you can stay young for real if you drink a lot of milk. Where you hear that? Malik up the street told me. He in the 8th grade, so, you know. Yo, maybe the box is full of milk then. Magic milk. A fountain of youth. Magic milk. Ha 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 ha. Nigga, that sound gross. Ah ha 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 ha. Kids laughter. Ah ha ha. Milk don't even taste good for real, for real. Arf. Arf, arf. How long that dog been there? Bro, what if it's been here all along? That dog could be the body of the box. And the box could be the brain. Since the box can't move, it uses the dog to run around doing dog type shit. What if the dog dies? Does the box go too? Good question. Maybe the box just makes a new one. Leap. Maybe all dogs belong to the box. Or they belong to someone in the box. Man, what? Well, it could be a whole tiny room of tiny little people living there. And they can probably hear us saying all this stuff, but it's all muffled, you know, because it's like through the box. Thinking we're like ghosts or gods. I know I'll be spooked like that. But maybe the little box people also have a box. They sit on it just like us and have their own talks just like us. And there's people in that box too. Just an endless cycle. Hey, yo, want some of these sunflower seeds? Regular or spicy? Spicy. Hell yeah. Eating montage. Crack. Pew. Munch, munch, munch. Munch, munch. I gotta head out soon. My mom's cooking chicken wings. Word. Yo, what if the box is just a box? All the pieces of paper we slip in, the box vents are still inside of it. All the dumb stuff we write is just dumb stuff we write. The sides of the box are just the sides of the box. And that's it. Too real. I got a theory. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of corny though. You talk like mind control and cop control and big ass robots. Like I get it. You weird. But we the ones who come sit on this box every day. The box ain't the box if we ain't here. So maybe the box has been within us all along. Yeah, that's corny. Also because it's flat. Why are you like this? All right, yo. I'll see you tomorrow. Bet. Dap. It's like a powerful dap, just like. Pop. And that's it.
That is dope. Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read a couple pieces for you now. Share my screen. And can everybody see and hear me okay? Okay. Awesome. So I have, I'll be reading a section of a new piece that I'm working on and then a couple older comics. All of these are dealing with water and sort of ritual and spirituality and traditions tied to water. All three of these pieces do. And there's a concept that I reference in all three of the comics that I'm going to read called Kalunja or Kalunja line. It's a Congolese cosmology that dictates water as the boundary between the living and the spirit world. Dedicated to Black folk, past, present, and future. And for Ahmad and our wandering conversations. The witches that lived at the water's edge, where the river touches the sea, still perform baptisms in accordance with the old ways, honoring the spirits that dwelled in deep water. They were capable of guiding you through the ritual. You must bring something to chart the boundaries so you can remember your way home. Something specific and accountable to the land and moment you intended to return. The deep was seductive. During the ritual, your consciousness at once travels toward and away from the depths of history. Yarrow, for boundaries. Flower offering for the spirits. Time behaved differently there. The space between memory and dream collapsed and vacillated as you drew nearer to Kalunja. That fabled site said to be the furthest depth of the soul, which corresponded to midnight. Don't forget where you are. Take note of the coordinates, not of the time. Mark the boundaries. The violence of linear time and capital were not respected or obeyed in the deep. It could not reach us here. So this was not a reliable way to measure how far you have traveled. Instead, mark the boundaries. 1790. On a different shore at the same moment on the other side of time, a blackjack prepares a message. He belonged to those seafaring men who quietly carry songs of rebellion to the many shores they are privileged to touch. He communed with the feminine and honored the deep. Conspiring with those agents of the underworld to ferry blessings and lamentations to those who are before and after. And that comic was called A Haunted Sea. It's something that I'm working on. This next piece was a one-shot comic originally published in Lab magazine, and the theme was death and hauntology. So this is my best try at a ghost story. It's inspired by the Igbo Landing Rebellion, also known as the Legend of the Flying Africans. "5,000 years after the end of the world. The ruins have appeared today. There must be a storm coming, and the spirits like that, when there is more water in the air than usual. I've heard of this place. I always thought it was a fairy tale, underwater ruins appearing in high country. Before the cataclysm, it was a river thought to have endless depths. Even now, the landscape shifts, never appearing the same way twice. Water has always been a portal for us, a sacred passage between the living and the dead, Kalunja. They brought ancestors here once, meant to be delivered and sold as slaves. During transport, they killed their would-be masters, and rejecting the enslavement that awaited them, walked into the water, calling to the river spirits, finding liberation in the undertow. Mutinies and rebellions of this kind happened throughout the old colonies. And on a day like today, when there is water in the air, they still gather and haunt the plains. And this last piece is a speculative short story responding to the true historical account of Buffalo soldiers or Black soldiers defecting to the insurrectionists when the US was occupying the Philippines at the turn of the century. There's also ghosts in this. The Black protagonist is an amalgamation of David Fagan, pictured here, who defected and fought with the Filipino insurrectionists. It was a really skillful guerrilla warfare soldier and was public enemy #1 for the American armies. And so the Black character in the story is an amalgamation of two figures, David Fagan and then Cathay Williams, who's the only known account of a woman who enlisted as a man in those regiments. She didn't serve in the Philippines, she was in North America. But this comic is also in part, me kind of dreaming about what it would have been like if such a figure, was in the Philippines and encountered these insurrectionists. And as I said before, that these are true accounts of Blacks defecting to fight in solidarity with the Filipino insurrectionists against American imperialism. And generally, in a moment like the moment that we're in right now, it comforts me to remember and reflect on these histories of insurrection and solidarity. And I hope this can serve to comfort you too. She had been secretly going to the river every morning since she arrived to practice her grandmother's ritual and to pray for those back home trying to survive in Jim Crow's South. But how did the daughter of a sharecropper come to find herself in a cathedral of the Philippine jungle? Masquerading as a man, no less. Altar for prayer. Fan tukulio risha. Knife that grandmothers had since her escape. Cowries to invite the spirits. She wasn't a patriot, but enlisting in the military was one way out for a misbehaved Black. To be employed by her country's imperial pursuits was a deal with the devil, to be sure, but she didn't really care where she went, so long as it took her away as close as possible to a place where she could be her whole self. But she hadn't been feeling very free lately, and she saw much of herself in the people she was meant to be fighting. Praying for insurrection back home while fighting one half a world away. The woman watching her morning rituals for the last 3 days knew this, and that is why she approached on the 4th day. She was also fond of river spirits. She said, "It was my grandmother who taught me the old ways, that even the loving riverine goddesses carried sword and wrath in defense of their people. My grandmother taught me to shoot, and it was her idea for me to enlist. The day she fled her plantation, she was prepared to pass into Kalunja, but the river spirits carried her safely over treacherous waters. Sisters in arms." Epilogue. Meanwhile, deep in the Philippine jungle, a buffalo wanders farther from home. It had been 3 months since she defected, and her world as she knew it was ending. She wondered, could there also be tenderness at the end of the world? They managed to disable 2 of the most strategic American encampments, and she had taken heart in the rumors of other Black officers gone missing during scouting missions, but the Americans continued to advance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to shift into our discussion.
We actually have a quick announcement from Lauren. Lauren, did you want to take it away?
Sure, I can do that.
Awesome.
I have something to present to you, Tanna, on behalf of the SF Zine Fest organizers. This is a certificate from the California Assembly, a certificate of recognition for Tanna Tucker on the event of the 19th annual San Francisco Zine Fest, recognizing Tanna Tucker, your work using the power of art to explore relationships within the Black diaspora is commendable. Congratulations on this notable occasion. Signed by Philip Y. Ting, Assemblyman for the 19th District, and David S. Chu, Assemblyman for the 17th District. And we'll make sure to actually get the physical certificate to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Whoop, whoop.
Thank you.
Well deserved, well deserved.
I'm so stoked. Thank you so much. Yeah, that means so much to me. Sorry, I'm emotional. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and shift into our discussion. And I have one recommendation for the 4 of us speaking. I think just go ahead and leave your mics on so we can have more natural flow of conversation.
And we just have a few moments, so maybe just 1 or 2.
Oh,
quick.
okay. Are we going until 7:30?
Are we going to 7:30, Lauren?
Yes, we are.
Okay, then you're fine. You have about 20 minutes.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, again, I'm really glad you guys are here. Okay, so I want to begin this discussion with acknowledging that we're artists along with everybody else occupying and existing in this intersection of unprecedented catastrophes, possibly witnessing an entire paradigm shift. And I want to talk about, how this has impacted your art practice, maybe how you conceive of it, not just client work, though you're welcome to speak about that if you want. But yeah, for me, I know it's made me even more earnest in the way that I keep boundaries around my time and my energy, and the way I've always been pretty good about that, but I think it's just made me even more urgent about, okay, protecting this time around rest, time that's devoted to rest, and time that's devoted to work that I make for myself that is generative. And so I'm wondering how maybe this has impacted similarly your relationship to art making and to work and your practice.
I first want to say, before anyone answers, let's just give a big congratulations, dude, for that award, that certificate. Thank you so much for all that you do. You really deserve it. I mean, you're so hardworking and you're committed not just to your craft, but to your community, and you make a difference in people's lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
So if someone wants to jump in and answer that lovely question, they can. I also have my answer too. So if you want me to start.
Yeah, kick us off, Minnie.
Okay. I want to say it is so important right now, like I mentioned in my talk, to take care of yourself. And for me, part of that, I have been so fortunate and lucky and grateful to have client work and to be able to sustain myself on client work. But I have been missing the soul nourishing aspect of having a practice, work that I make for myself. Whether that becomes published or not or whatever, it's not important necessarily to the work that you want to do regardless of being paid or not. So I actually just started working on something that feels so indulgent. I mean, so insanely indulgent, but I love it. I've been working on a like several comic pitches and comics that are like anime and manga influence with transformation, like magical girls as one, and one being like vampires and werewolves. And like, there's no shame in that. That's awesome. And the thing that I think is so powerful and so beautiful, especially seeing the example of the artists here on the panel tonight, is that the fact that our voices exist mean that our work will always be something that represents our lived experiences, our cultures, our values, whatever it is that we bring to the table. Now, I'm getting inspiration from these like Japanese magical girl comics, but they're not my life, necessarily. I mean, the character designs of a lot of Japanese characters does sort of fantasize white faces and white aspects. And so I want to see brown characters. I want to see immigrant characters. I want to see characters that are, the things that I saw in my life. And also like an American twist to something like a magical girl is kind of awesome. So I'm really excited, and I think it's so necessary to have that excitement and to pour that joy into making and art. So I appreciate this question too. I think it's really like nailing down like the truth that you, as an artist, you live the experience, and you have to make the work that really brings joy.
Yes. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to respond to that particular question?
I can go. I think it's interesting because too, I definitely have I don't necessarily want to go super deep into it, but I have gotten more client work, interestingly enough, since the beginning of, not interestingly enough, I think it kind of also coincides with some other issues at hand and why Black artists are desired very much right now.
Oh yeah.
But that's sort of picked up in the last couple of months, which is I'm thankful for. And I think as far as my personal practice, it's like, I often talk about how I have to get work out really fast. Like I just have to make something and then just get it out. Because if I don't do that, then it's just never going to happen. And I think it kind of turned itself on its head when I did a drawing for a friend a couple weeks ago. What is it? A few days ago, I guess. And like, what is time? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I felt it was a drawing on paper, and it wasn't super big. It was maybe like 6 by 9 or something, and it took me like 3 or 4 hours to complete like this single drawing, which I hadn't done in years. Like I just had not put that much intense focus on a single drawing in a long time, and it brought a lot of solace. I think especially right now, a lot of mental health stuff is like at a high, and so kind of my practice being something that brings that sense of like meditation again has been really pleasant, and I'm hoping to like lean into that in the coming weeks of being okay with taking my time doing things, and that it's not always like a rate, like some made up rat race in my brain to like complete a thing. And that's sort of new, and so I think I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks that continues. But I think that has been the main way in which my work has sort of changed. Everything else feels pretty much the same, aside from like not drawing for like 2 months. But
that's the rest part.
I didn't do shit for like 2 months. I feel like that was like for me this like guilty thing of like, oh my god, I didn't post on the internet, whatever,
Yeah. You're like literally sitting here, for those of us that are in California, feeling guilt when the sky is like orange for 24 hours, and it's like we're like, as somebody said, living inside that meme of like, this is fine, and we're like, but we have to be at our drawing board. Like I still had a moment of that day, and then I was like, no.
Richie, I saw you comment on this Instagram thread that was happening. It was like something, or Twitter thread. It was something where it was like, oh, how do you become Instagram famous as an artist? Like post fan art, whatever. And you said something that was like, there are people who are doing dope like dope things without having like 1,000 more followers. You know what I mean? Like that people are making work and like being artists and like creating, even if they're not public about it. And that's something I think we have to remember and remind each other.
Yeah, like the majority of my like current coworkers have like Twitter followers that are like half of mine, and they already have like careers been going on, and like they're so good, you just don't see it, you know. So it's like, I know people think it's like it's related, but it's still just a part. It's like saying like, you know, promote more and you'll get whatever. It's kind of like it's just another part of it. It's just that social media is so like prominent in how it like promotes itself in your life. Like it's everything. So it feels like the biggest Twitter accounts have the biggest whatever. But yeah, it kind of affected me too. Like, you know, I was freelancing illustration for like I think maybe 6 years or something. Which I can't tell if that's a long time or not. So I kind of gone through like pretty much every like client, every type of job, every bad job, good job, bad experience, you know, from my end or theirs, you know. And then, but near the end, I was kind of getting like fatigue of like, who am I doing this for?
Yeah.
You know, so you start to do like radical art for a company, and it feels like what did I? It's like I did nothing. It feels like I just like I gave somebody like money, but it was just like empty air. Like I didn't do anything. And so like, especially with everything popping off this year, like police brutality wise, I kind of was like, it's pointless. It felt like pointless what I was doing. Like I'm just making art for like New York Times or New Yorker or like, you know, it's not going anywhere. So then like I just happened to sort of do some freelance stuff for CN and Craig of the Creek, and that turned into like full time. And that was the first time I had like this type of job. And so like I didn't even know it was full time for months because I was just so used to being freelance. So I was just like I was there for 2 weeks before kind of COVID like followed all this shit, and I didn't really mentally adjust because I was so used to just being freelance. So I just felt like I was like visiting. I still like I was in an office and I was like, I'm in an office. I was like, why is my name on this door? What is this? Like and my brain was like, this is the office. I gotta get out of here. And like it was great. Like the people are great. My brain was just so not used to that type of life. And so now I get to draw like, you know, like Black kid cartoons and put stories in there, like, you know, like me and Pearl Lowe. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her work. Boarded hair love. And so like we like we're working on stuff soon again on the show, so that's gonna be cool. Like doing like episodes. And yeah, it that at least feels like I'm no longer like the star of the show. I'm just like a part of it. You know, so like it did wonders for my ego. You know, I'm still like adjusting, but it's like I don't have to be like the person who's like the entire business. I just get to be a part of it. So I feel like that's at least like a nice thing to do in a lot of this, you know, turmoil.
Yeah, right on. Thank you for that. So I know that actually everybody here, I think, we're trained in other mediums and modes of storytelling first. Like I know I'm trained as a painter and illustrator first, and then moved into comics. So I'm wondering why comics, and as a storyteller, what is it about this format that feels at home for you? And how do you decide when you want to develop a story in that format specifically? And I'm asking because I see you all definitely shifting between illustration and sequential for different kinds of stories and concepts.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you go right ahead.
We'll do it in reverse this time. So yeah, for me, comics was something I did as a kid. It was just, I think my mom used to always give me the like newspaper strips, so that was where a lot of that early interest came from. And watching cartoons on TV, I used to watch like a lot of TV, and so that I think that naturally became like how I talked because I was like a really quiet kid. And so for me, like comics, I think people sort of treat it as like a potential movie or like a suspect kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
with that is storyboards. And with boards, you're still thinking of time, whereas comics, you can like control time. So you it doesn't have to make sense, you know. So like someone could be in the middle of like falling and have a whole monologue, you know, it doesn't have to make sense. Or you can play with time. Like I try to do a lot of that stuff. But also I think I learned from I kind of came up through indie comics. So I learned a lot of how to like say more like, you know, controversial things or like approach things that are like sensitive by like pulling people in with like a visual kind of look. Like, you know, the contrast of like having something look like cute, but then the narrative is like really intense. Or like maybe shapes are really good and really like appealing, but maybe it's like really serious moment. Something that makes you like really focus, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like that's what pulls me into doing comics. Is I'm not really like like do a bunch of like weird panel angles and stuff. Like I think visually I get really kind of like easily distracted. So when something's too visually intense, I'm like, yo, there's legs flying out the panel. Like I can't read this. This is a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I feel like that's what draws me to comics, like being able to play with time and like scale and composition to, you know, to other things.
You know, I really want to bounce off what you're saying about there being no rules in comics and cartoons. And that's the liberation and the freedom that I feel making comics, which I think I actually make a lot more comics in my sketchbook and my journal and like my private work than I do it publicly. I definitely don't, I mean, the comic that I shared tonight is definitely an exception. I was so grateful that they were super down with the comic idea and they let me do that for months, which was super cool. But it's the exception. Usually it's like one image and I get so caught up in things being lush or beautiful or looking like presentable and polished or whatever. But with cartoons, I like I said, it's indulgent. There's no rules to what a comic looks like or how to draw it or whatever style. I mean, style is whatever you want. So I think it's one of the few spaces where I feel like I can bring in different influences. And not feel like I'm going to upset someone. I think there's sort of like an ego in the illustration world. I think there's definitely like competition, like having your own unique style or flair, like being, especially, I mean, I grew up on television and comics. I mean, that's how I got into art. But when you get into the illustration world, like New York Times, they want you to know like fine art and like museums and stuff. But for someone who grew up poor and as an immigrant, like I didn't have access to that, but I did have access to Cartoon Network. And so it's something like making comics. It's like, I know I'll always be able to make that space for myself, that there is no gatekeeper, not necessarily. I sure maybe in publishing there may be, but comics is one of the few spaces where you can come from any background, any field and make comics. So if you're someone watching and you want to make a comic, it's going to kick your ass, but do it.
Yeah.
You could be like the director, the like casting director, like, you know, design, like producer. You're like every role, you know, in a way you're the actor because you're making up characters, the screenwriter, all that stuff. Yeah.
Or you could puppet.
Don't draw well, and that's the thing. You don't have to be able to draw well to make a good comic. Like,
yeah.
I've been like really moved by drawings that I'm like, damn, I wish I could draw that because that story was really fucking good. Like,
yeah.
Everyone should read Dogman. It's like the most popular kids comics out in the market right now. It's a massive hit. Aside from its capitalistic success, it's like it's also brilliant. It's like done in this kid way, and it's taught children how to read. I mean, that's kind of amazing. And an example, like you don't have to have lush, beautiful drawings. But I also feel your pain, Tanna, of like wanting to put in your painterly art school education, but then do like 200 pages. It's like, okay, how do I make everything fit? And yeah.
I mean, I've mentioned this before, but for me, the hardest thing is like figuring out my shorthand. I still feel like I'm trying to figure out a shorthand. I'm so incredibly slow with like working sequentially. I mean, some of the more recent work I've done is like fast for me, and it's still so incredibly slow compared to like proper cartoonists. So yeah. Actually, do we have time for a couple more questions, maybe, or?
We do have time. I'd say for at least one, for sure.
Okay. Because Minnie, you said something that I think segues into another question I had about gatekeeping. And in terms of these communities and the industries, because I do kind of feel like it's two separate components. What would you like to see happen in order to make them more equitable and inclusive or less gate-kept and demystified? And I'm also thinking about that in terms of what we can do for each other, like being in community with each other to make these spaces or, industries less gate kept.
I feel like, I don't know, I guess thinking about it in terms of like, say, art school, there's just a lot of nepotism, right? You know, a lot of it is like, oh, well, this person knows this person and has whatever sort of relationship to them, and thus they're going to hire them regardless of whatever, versus someone who like didn't go to art school and didn't network and doesn't have the same access necessarily to have that same level of just like being able to just reach out or toss a stick out and, you know, be hired for whatever. I think a lot of that work is on, I think the only way that's going to get done is if those gatekeepers do the work, right? Like you need to put forth effort to research and find these people because they're out there. They're like, you walk down the street and there's somebody selling their art on the sidewalk, or you go to a zine fest and there are all these people who are selling their stuff and doing what they do. And it just feels like if there was a little bit more intention and care in that process, that could maybe alleviate some things. But then there's also, you know, the cost and the privilege of like certain kinds of art making to some degree that also gets in the way. Like, why is art school like $50,000 a semester? Like, who, like for what? What are you? Why is that so much money? You know, like people who, of course, people learn in different ways, and I just wish that there were more. You know, I didn't go to art school, and it took me a long time to figure out like, oh, I can watch YouTube videos. I can send artists that I like emails and see if they respond to me. I can go to Zine Fest. There are all these other things that I can do that can help me understand a little bit more of what's going on. And I just wish that that was, especially in high school, I just remember like constantly being told like, you need to go to college because if you don't, you're going to mess with our demographics and we're not going to be like an A+ school in our like whatever. I mean, they didn't say that, but like that's the sentiment, right? And so like, so, like I don't know. I think just if I guess that's just one part of it. And as far as like within communities, I think just constantly like uplifting each other and just like, you know, for example, like Crate Club, you know, like Tanna and I are part of a group that have been meeting every Wednesday, and we're constantly shouting at Crate Club because it's just such a wholesome space where everyone just shares their work and talks through what they're doing, and everyone is at a different place in their career and has different desires for their personal careers, and having spaces like that that are self-contained but like open to others. I think similarly with Black Draw Club too, it's like this is a specific thing, but it's also open to whoever needs that kind of space for their own personal growth. Hopefully that answers that question more or less.
No, thank you. We're just kind of discussing, yeah.
I wanted to clear. Well, I mean, maybe if someone wants to clarify, but I'm thinking about this question about, well, who is the gatekeeper? And I think for myself, I have been my own gatekeeper than other people have been. I have been someone who has told myself, well, who wants to hear that story? Why would I tell that story? Is it even important or necessary? So I become my own gatekeeper as if it's not good enough, as if it's not going to be to the masses liking. And so I feel like the gatekeeper we should first tear down is the one in ourselves that isn't that it was like some organic thing that came within us. It was from years of sexism, racism, of oppression, of someone else telling you that you're not good enough or worth it. You know, like we should have more diverse stories. And I think the reality is that the industry does want it. That it does, even though, I mean, I know I say that because I have heard from art directors, I have heard from agents, I've heard from publishers who want our voices, but I feel like, yeah, not that they want our voices. They can definitely work harder on getting our voices out there, but also we can't hold ourselves back and say we have to make someone else happy, make a certain amount of money, make the perfect work or whatever. You just have to make the work and put it out there.
Yeah.
I think for me, at least for illustration, a lot of gatekeeping is how we treat each other. So I would like to see us not charge each other for stuff. Like if we're trying to build a community, we can't complain about like rates and clients and also be like charging each other for like our knowledge. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that we also makes sense that we treat students as potential money. Like that's weird.
Yeah.
Like publications have millions of dollars. Why are we charging like to give knowledge, you know? Like it used to be part of like communities where people were confused that people didn't charge for knowledge. And before I was like more radicalized, even then I was like, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that. You know, so a certain time I started to make my, you know, comics free, or at least like download and like name your price kind of stuff. Just because, you know, some people really don't have the money for Photoshop. Like it's $10, but some people do not have that to draw. You know, so the alternatives are like, well, there's apps you pay like $5 once. You know, like I can't tell you like the amount of return I've gotten on like some apps is like crazy because I paid like $3. You know, versus like, you know, I also think that we're sometimes too close to them in terms of like a lot of our shows. And I know the sponsorships and whatnot, but so many shows have been like sponsored by, and then like some really fucked up company that actually I know doesn't care and is almost like complete competition with the people at the show. It's like really sick. And when organizers try to rationalize it, it's just weird. It makes you feel weird. So I think that hypocrisy is a big part of the gatekeeping. Because it kind of ruins like organization. And when we do have stuff like this year, the industries don't know how to like respond because they haven't built community, period. So Black art, share their Venmo, like they don't know what to do.
They like short circuit essentially. Yeah.
So those are sort of my thoughts on that.
Thank you. I mean, I love talking about this, and I think it's really important. And I think to just add to everything that you've said, you know, when you're talking about transparency and sharing knowledge, I think specifically some of that knowledge we need to cultivate a culture of sharing around is compensation, and not undervaluing each other and buying into like these narratives of scarcity and work and competition. I don't believe in that. And I feel like I see that more kind of I'm generalizing, but kind of in illustration and editorial illustration, like what you, Minnie and Richie were talking about. And I feel like I see more of these discussions with cartoonists and comics artists happening. And of course this all overlaps, but yeah, I'd like to see more just like demystifying and transparency amongst us around compensation, payment, even like your experience with different clients, and just, not just view each other as commodities and competition.
Yeah, real quick, I related. I got into an open Twitter argument, as you know, people do. With
like you do.
A startup that was trying to sell digital art like it was scarce, and I was like, "That's stupid." I just said stupid because it's a horrible idea. And they debated with me. The CEO debated with me. I was like, "It's digital art. You can't make up fake scarcity. Like, stop doing this." And I was like, you know, I make my art free. A lot of art, digital art, should be like allowed for people to just look at it. And I think he was like, "Well, that's interesting. I respect that you make your art free, or like make it so people can see it." And I was like, "See, that's the problem right there."
Yeah,
It was so backwards. Like, people trying to like control the stuff that we shouldn't be, gatekeeping.
Yeah.
I mean, the comics community is a lot more chill than the illustration community. I mean, again, like I'm not going to disclaim anything. I'm just saying the comics community is more chill.
I agree.
No one's making money from comics, really. That's just kind of the reality. You can like maybe survive, but the thing is, illustration is very intrinsically connected to capitalism and making money, and there are people who do make like a lot of money from illustration, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just breeds certain kind of competition. I think exactly, and I think that if we're able to talk about that and and support each other and and see each other as people and not just as this like output machine. I
Mhm.
think that will make the community a lot stronger.
I have
Thank
a lot.
you.
Yeah, sorry, Evie, I wanted to check in.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I know that we are at time, and I know this is something we could talk about all night, but
Hey, the zine community. Hey, we give our zines and comics away, so I'm really grateful for that. That the zine community typically trade. We find a way to get our work in different people's hands without necessarily charging a whole bunch of money for it. Uh, but again, thank you guys so much. This has been wonderful. It's always great to hear you guys get your input and hear your opinions and your voices, and see you even if it's just virtually. Any last things that you guys want to say before we completely wrap up?
Thank you. You're all so great. So
I
amazing.
I
Sam's
really
the best.
also want to give a big shout out to our captioners, our
Yeah.
ASL interpreters. Thank you guys. You're amazing. Thank you for to Intersection for the arts. And gosh, if you're still with us, if you're listening, please make sure to go over to our SF Zine Fest store. And this year we didn't necessarily get all the funding that we've gotten years past. So buy some merch. We have beautiful posters, beautiful stickers made by our guest of honor. And again, we do have a few things coming up this week. Tomorrow is show and tell from 6 to 7. Saturday, we have a drawing and zine making hangout from 1 to 2 p.m. And then the log off, our closing party, Saturday from 2 to 3. And again, thank you guys so much. This has been an awesome 3 weeks. And Tanna, you're amazing. Your guests are superb. Yeah, thank you guys. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'm so grateful.